Hello everyone. In this session, we will go through the steps involved in using persistent disks with WordPress and MySQL. In a previous video, I had created the theory behind the persistent volume and persistent volume claims. So if you haven't watched that video, go ahead and watch that video before you watch this video. Before you start, you need to make sure that you have an account in Google Cloud platform, and also you have the G Cloud installed on your laptop. So the first thing you want to do is you want to create a project. So we will go ahead and create a project. And we will call this persistent disks. Now, once this project is created, we will have a project ID. Okay, the project is created. So let's get the project ID. So this is your project ID. And let's set these config values so we don't have to type them over and over again. So we'll set the project ID config value. And since I'm in Atlanta, we will also set the region to be US East. Now let's go ahead and create a cluster, a Google Kubernetes Engine cluster. Now this will fail because we haven't enabled the API yet. So once it fails, we'll go ahead and enable the Google Kubernetes API. So this failed, so let's go ahead and enable the Kubernetes engine. Let's go ahead and enable it. Okay, let's go ahead and run the command again. Okay, the cluster is now created with the 3 nodes. And then the next thing what we want to do is, before we even proceed, go ahead and download all these YAML files. So you have all these deployment and servers YAML files and the persistence volume claim configuration files. So go ahead and download all these 6 YAML files. So I have already downloaded these files. Now what we want to do is um, we want to apply this volume claim first. So let's look at the YAML file first. So MySQL volume claim. So this volume claim, and like I said, the PVC, the persistence volume claim, can be created by the user or the developer. And basically, you're saying that you need a storage of 200 gigs. Now, the access mode that we have here is read write once, which means only one pod can use this persistent storage. Okay, so let's go ahead and run this command so that we create this persistent volume claim. Now, one thing to also note is that this YAML file does not contain any storage class name. And we also have not created any persistent volumes. So by default, what it will do is it will use the default storage class. The Kubernetes cluster will use the default storage class and allocate you 200 gigabytes. Okay, this is complete, and we will run a similar command to create the volume for WordPress. And let's also have a look at that YAML file as well, the WordPress. And again, here we want 200 GB of storage. The access mode is read write once, so only one pod can claim this volume. Okay, so the Kubernetes cluster has allocated us 200 GB each. And it used the default storage class since we didn't specify any storage class in our YAML file, and also because there are no persistent volumes created by the administrator. Now let's have a look at the PVCs that are created. So we should see two PVCs created. Yes, we see two PVCs created, and the capacity is 200 GB. So we are good for this, and the access mode is read write once. And then the next thing what we want to do is we want to create this MySQL deployment file. Now, if you look at the MySQL deployment file, the MySQL requires a password. Now, we don't want to put the password in the YAML file itself because it can be easily seen by everyone. So what we want to do is we want to create a secret. So this command here will create a secret, and in my case, I'm putting the password as Milton. So let's run this command. Now, one thing to realize is this secret is stored as plain text in the Kubernetes cluster etcd. So so if you're the administrator, you want to make sure that you restrict access to the Kubernetes API server and also the etcd. Okay, so we've gotten this password out of the way. So now let's go ahead and create this. Let's use this deployment file. So here is our deployment file. And here we are using this persistent volume claim that we had just created in the previous step. So we already have a persistent volume claim for 200 GB. So when we deploy this, this will get bound to that PVC. Okay, so the deployment is created. So let's make sure that the pod is created. So we use the selector to make sure that this pod is created. Yeah, and the container is still creating. It takes a little while because it needs to bind itself to this PVC that is 200 GB. We can proceed further, and let's go ahead and create the WordPress YAML file at this moment. Now let's look at the YAML file first for the WordPress. And the WordPress YAML file also has a secret, but it uses the same secret that we've already created, the MySQL. Again, make sure that the access to etcd is restricted. So let's go ahead and create this deployment file. Now again, this WordPress YAML file also has a claim named the WordPress volume claim, and we had created two volume claims before, so this will get bound to this 200 GB storage. Now let's make sure that the first the MySQL got bound or it got created. Let's go ahead and make sure it got created. Yeah, so it got created, it is running. But in the meantime, we can go ahead and create the service. So we all know to reliably connect to the pod, we need to create a service, and we can look at the service file. And here we are using the type as cluster IP, which means it's accessible within the cluster. So we go ahead and create the MySQL service, and this service is created. Let's see if the WordPress pod got created. Yeah, it is created. So let's go ahead and create the service for WordPress as well. Now the service for WordPress needs to have external access. So if you look at the WordPress service YAML file, the type is set to load balancers, and that is because we need external access to it. So let's go ahead and create this service. Now this will give us an external IP address. Again, takes a little while to allocate this external IP address. So let's go ahead and check. So it's still pending. So once we have this external IP address, we should be able to access the WordPress website. Okay, so the external IP address is created. So let's go ahead and make sure that we can access it. Yeah, and sure enough, we can access the WordPress website. Now what we can do is we can go ahead and delete these pods as well. But before that, let's go ahead and check that the pods, where the pods are running. So this gives us more information about the node. So we have the MySQL pod and the WordPress pod, and it looks like they are both running on the same node. But let's go ahead and delete the MySQL pod. And then the Kubernetes controller will be smart enough to go ahead and restart it because the number of replica is 1. So, so it needs to match the actual state with the desired state. So I'm going to delete the pod. So the pod did get deleted. But if I run the command again, get pods, you will notice that the Kubernetes controller is recreating another pod. Okay, the pod is now recreated. So we should be able to access this web page again. Okay, so we are able to access this web page again. Okay, then we need to clean up. So because we created the service for WordPress as a load balancer, let's go ahead and delete that first because the load balancer is a costly operation. So let's go ahead and delete it first, and let's make sure that it got deleted. Okay, sure enough, it got deleted. Now let's go ahead and delete these two volume claims, the claims for 200 GB capacity. And it got deleted. And let's go ahead and delete the MySQL volume claim as well. And the last would be to delete the cluster itself. And let's go ahead and delete this cluster. This will take a little while for it to delete. I'll go ahead and delete it. Yes, so these are the steps involved in doing this exercise. If you have any questions, let me know. And if you like this video, please subscribe as well. Thank you.